What is the worst punishment you ever received as a child? Probably when my mom spanked me with the back of her favorite hairbrush. Then the hairbrush broke and I got spanked some more because that was her favorite hairbrush. When I was young and taking interest in girls, my parents made a rule with no girls over the house alone with me. Even to study, all doors are open, no locks. This will all happen after I got caught in a compromising situation with my girlfriend at church. I went on like that for a while until I was 14/15. A friend of mine who was on the weightlifting team was over my house one day. He was changing in my room and my parents walked in on him in his boxers and me sitting on my bed. I still remember that moment. They both paused and looked at each other and said it got weird for a couple days. When they finally said something, it was very positive towards me seeing women, got a lock on my door, and girls were very welcome in the house alone with me. Even got a few, "Why don't you even bring that one girl around more often?" My parents really didn't want me to be gay. I grew up with my grandmother and I can't exactly remember what I did, but next thing I know, she's lying a piece of uncooked rice in the corner for me to kneel on for 10 minutes. It felt like I was kneeling in gravel driveway with sharded rocks. Definitely the buck rag. I still feel sick thinking about it. For those who don't know, a buck rag is a rag that's been rubbed all over a male's goat in a runt. It's used for some goat breeding purposes since lady goats love the smell. In our town, some parents would buy these rags from goat farmers to punish children for misbehaving. Take the child out back, put the rag out on the jar, drape it over the child's face, and tie a knot in the back. It's not dangerous, but it makes them smell the horrible goat odor. I never saw what the big deal was until I was buck ragged. As a 16-year-old girl for cursing out my parents, I puked a lot. 7 years old. I wouldn't move my hands from my butt, so my mom dragged me into the bathroom. While there, she lifted me up by my legs and attempted to give me a swirly. My hands immediately launched onto the toilet bowl to stop my head from falling in. Then my mom freed one of her hands to turn my butt red. After a few hits, my arms gave out and my head dropped hard into the toilet water. After that, she yelled at me for 5 more minutes and ordered me to take a shower. She still denies doing this or any of the other corporal punishments my sister and I were subject to. Probably getting strangled by my dad after I stormed away from the dinner table while yelling that I hate eating with my parents because all they did was yell and curse at each other. My dad once told me that if I let the word crap cross my lips again, I'll truly have crap cross my lips. I didn't listen and said it again that night. He took a piece of fresh dog poop and made me hold it on my tongue for 30 seconds. I cried and never cursed again until I was 21. I got the wooden spoon a lot, and once my mom was so angry that she threw a porcelain teapot at my back of my head while I was going down the stairs. But the scariest beating I saw happened to my best friend in high school. We were supposed to be having a sleepover at her house, but instead we went out and partied till like 3 a.m. When we got to her house, her dad was up and he was ticked. He beat her with a field hockey stick for what seemed like forever. She was in bad shape. Suffice it to say, I never slept over there again. I didn't even manage to call 911. I was a scared 15-year-old and was definitely in shock. Either the cigarette butts on my scalp or the days without food because I misbehaved. My parents were and still are meth addicts. Freak them. My stepbrother punched me in the face and gave me a bloody lip. My stepmom decided as punishment she would hit us both with the belt. I don't know why I was in trouble for getting punched, but she held onto the end of the belt with the holes and swung the belt buck at us. It hit the back of my right hand and I still feel the pain in my back of my hand when I squeeze something with it. I got punished for getting punched in the face. I still don't understand what I did wrong 23 years later. Hands tied behind my back with a belt and I couldn't cover myself. And then beat above the face, neck, and shoulders with another belt for several minutes. Dad was a real piece of crap. I was bad at school, so my mom took all of my furniture. Literally all of it. I had to sleep and eat on the floor for a week. She did let me keep my favorite blankie though. I was driven about 30 minutes outside of my city to an isolated, large, and creepy looking building, which I was told was an orphanage. I was given the choice of telling the truth and admitting to something I have not done or being left there. I'm 38 and still think about this from time to time. Not to excuse what they did, but my mom and dad both had terrible upbringings with abusive parents. My dad was full of anger and my mom was rather weak and full of shame. I started therapy about 5 years ago and was reaching a point where I was going to decide whenever to confront my parents with how I felt about my childhood or cut them from my life. Then my dad died. With his death, a lot of my own anger about how they behaved went. I've been able to be the bigger person with my mom and set her a better example of how to behave, including how I expected her to behave towards me. Our relationship is stronger than it had been ever, and I don't dwell on the events in the same way. I used to be hurt thinking about it a lot. Now, I see it as the reactions of anger and scared people to a situation they couldn't control and resolve to do better myself. My parents homeschooled me in my last year of school because I had a boyfriend. I lost my seat and scholarship to this college I have early acceptance from since the 11th grade. And then they took my RESP for themselves to go on a cruise when I went with a different program because I didn't have the marks for the original program. The pointless ones. We had landscaping rocks in our yard from an unfinished project and they were probably 30 pounds each. After several other punishments failed, my parents came up with the move rock punishments. I had to move 30 or so of these rocks 50 yards, set them apart in a particular shape, square, circle, etc. Have my parents check them and then move them all back. The pointlessness of all of it was the worst. I broke my arm while trying to escape my father's grip during a well-deserved butt whooping. I told my brother to freak off and die. I turned around to a 2x4 to the chest and spent 8 hours total picking up tiny bit of rocks out of the yard and putting them in a bucket. When the bucket was full, my dad would walk around the yard throwing them around and then I'll pick them up again. My uncle would have me stand T-pose and hold books. Not too bad. Then I have to stand on my toes and then he would put nails sticking up under my heels. He would dare me to relax. I was in kindergarten and I had peed myself because I was having too much fun watching a movie in class. The teacher put me in the bathroom with the lights out and with the door closed for the rest of the movie around 45 minutes or so. It was storming badly outside. I'm still afraid of the dark and loud noises. My sister cheated on a paper, so all 4 of us lost computer privileges for a month. Collective punishment just isn't effective or fair. My dad found an old wooden hockey stick that was thrown away. He saw it and thought it'll make a good weapon to beat us with. He called it Mr. Sticko and broke over my back for something I did. That one really sucked. When I was around 6 years old, my stepdad woke up in the middle of the night by pulling me out of bed and yelling that I had peed on the toilet seat. He took me out on the front porch while he was paddling me. The rail I was bracing against broke and I fell off the porch. My mother canceled my birthday one year. I was being a mouthy little crap and didn't believe she would follow through once she presented it as a potential consequence for my behavior. Turns out my mother doesn't make empty threats. No gifts received, and I had to sit there while she called my friend's parents to say the party was off. I think the other mothers were mortified, but I got the gifts she sent back a month later for Christmas, and I learned a few lessons. When I was 8 years old, I had every dish in the house thrown at me, including a loaf of bread. I was then locked outside till midnight. I was first put out in the morning. I got put on restrictions for 6 months for doing something my mom said I could do, but then she said she never permitted me to do it, even though another adult was sitting there and confirmed he heard her permit me to do it. I also had to pick up all the rocks in the vacant lot next to our house and put them in a pile on weekends as part of the punishment. I crapped my pants in the 4th grade. I don't know why, but I had a condition that made me hold it all in and not use the toilet. This has been going on and off my entire childhood. My dad was furious. I remember being naked in my bedroom with my dad. My dirty underwear was on the floor and my dad had a hard grip on my arm while she screamed and yelled at me. He yelled at me things like, "How old are you? No one's going to want to be friends and you're disgusting." He then beat me with his belt. My dad worked at a flour mill and spent his day stacking 100-pound flours 10 feet high, so he was built like a freaking Hulk. He would then rub my crack-filled underwear in my face, making me look at it and smell it. My mom grabbed me by both shoulders and shook me until I went through a wall, but I thought I was never going to breathe again when she put both her knees on my chest and yelled at me while holding me down and shaking my shoulders. I was the youngest of 3 girls in my family. My worst punishment came from my dad after he left. As a baby, my dad would beat my sisters for little things and they did wrong, but because I was born on his birthday, he saw me as special. My father was a drunk, drug addict who brought fear into the home, and only I wasn't touched by his fist and feet. My sisters and mom were all victims while they tended their wounds. I was smoothed and loved. They hated me for it. Dad left and now no one was protecting me. What was my worst punishment? I was locked up. My mom would lock me in my room for hours and my sisters had free reign on me with their punishments. Every time I stepped out of line, I was reminded how much hate there was. I was beaten by my sisters and neglected by my mom. My worst punishment was when I said to my mom that I hated her and the family and I wished they were all dead. She grabbed me by the hair, dragged me into the laundry, and locked me in there. The floor was stone and was winter. I remember being so cold it hurt. I guess I was asleep when I was eventually let out. I hated my punishment. The locking up stopped when I was around 12. In the 1980s, my father was a radio man and often had spare parts lying around. Whenever I was rebellious towards him, he was fond of whipping my bare back with a metal radio antenna. Some guy my mom brought home that she was dating got really drunk and took me in the bathroom and beat me with a belt. He said it was about 20 clicks, but he was so drunk he kept losing count. I tried crawling behind the toilet for protection but couldn't fit. That just made him angrier. I tried not to cry because I learned they enjoyed that, but I couldn't help it. I don't remember anything after that. Made to drink distilled vinegar. It was probably from age 5 to 10 that my parents used it as punishment. They would rotate between spanking and whipping our butts with leather swats or the branches of our beloved willow tree, putting us in corners for extended periods if we cried or complained, 20 minutes doubled to 40, and so on and so forth. Old-fashioned soap, and the God-forbidden vinegar. I still have major teeth and jaw problems at 22, and my stomach and esophagus have never felt normal. My dad holding me up by grabbing my ears and my foot. LOL. My dad broke the cartilage in my ear like this. It turned blackish and hurt when the wind blew, though I had an ear infection. She took me to the doctor. The guy says this crap broke and asked what happened. I hadn't realized what happened until the doctor asked me, and I thought for a second and saw my mother staring at me, and I went, I fell. I always thought I just saved this bench a really awkward situation. At Catholic school with nuns as teachers, those benches were doing the devil's work. I remember being forced to kneel on hardwood floors on popcorn carols when saying the rosary. Freak you, Sister Mary John, you evil witch. Honestly, I could withstand almost any punishment, may it be physical or otherwise, pretty well even as a child. It just never bothered me. The worst punishment I received was having my phone, car, laptop taken away from me for a crime I didn't commit. Basically, my parents found a fifth of expensive Scott whiskey missing from the liquor cabinet and blamed me until about a week later when one of our family friends called them thanking for the gift. They had somewhat both completely forgotten all about it. Getting in trouble when I was innocent was what really got to me. My mom pulled down my pants and hit me with the brush side of a hairbrush in front of my 3 fellow 5-year-old friends. I was innocent. She didn't believe me. My mom said I couldn't have a best friend anymore because my best friend and I were drawing pentagrams on MS Paint at our after-school program, pretending they were transmutant circles from an anime called Full Metal Alchemist. My mom immediately jumped into this being a deficit warrior, despite my friend and I did not even know what a pentagram really meant. This led to my mom telling every single teacher and after-school care worker not to allow me to be anywhere near my friend. Friend moves away, and mom won't let me email her to stay in touch. I'm 24 now and haven't had any close friends since. Christina, if you're out there, I still miss you. My sister and I constantly watched Star Wars and quoting Star Wars and playing with Star Wars toys that it drove my parents to ban all Star Wars related things in the house for 3 months. I came home drunk when I was around 17, probably about 1 a.m. or so. I know I was in before curfew. For reasons unknown, my mom just happened to be awake and caught me. She made me stay awake and play cards with her, and I had to do chores in the middle of the night. I asked my dad to simply beat me, and he wouldn't do it. Jerks! Had my door taken off the hinges, and all of my belongings, sands, bed, dresser, taken out of my room. Some sold, some tossed, some given to my younger sibling. This punishment lasts a full 4 months, just before I dropped from a B to a C in one of my classes in high school. So glad I finally cut them out of my life. My dad used to tell us he'll sell us to the gypsies if we didn't behave. Once you get a bit older, you realize he's bluffing. At least I hope he was. This led to one of my hilarious incidents when my dad shouted at my 7-year-old brother that he was going to get the gypsies and make them come get him. He picked up the phone and started dialing a number. My 7-year-old brother smiled, knowing full well he wasn't really, but my 4-year-old brother burst into tears, ran to my dad screaming, No, don't sell Benny to the gypsies, please don't do it, bawling his eyes out. Totally backfired. My mom took everything in my room except the blanket, my radio, books, toys, you name it. I was locked in there for the UK summer holidays. They were 6 weeks long. My mom used to beat 10 bells of crap out of, but being locked in that room the whole summer was probably the worst. Not me, but one of my siblings. We were quite young and didn't want to finish all the food on their plate. So my stepdad duct taped them to the dining room chair and wouldn't let them out until they finished. My grandparents beating my mother in front of me for me talking to her. I was in their custody and my mother was an addict who they didn't want around and she kept trying to call and come see me. So she came over and my parents beat her, broke her jaw and nose, and said it was my fault for talking to her. I was 7. I was slapped across the face as a 12-year-old girl by my father when I burned nachos in the microwave. This was the first time he slapped me, so I remember it so well. He used to spank me, but switched to open hand slaps to the face when I got too old for spanking. My dad had a belt he kept on a nail in the kitchen. If you got in trouble, you would get hit with it with a number of times on your butt. That hurt. Father of 3, I never used physical discipline on any of my kids. When I was 14 during an entrance interview to a high school I didn't want to go to with the headmistress and my dad by my side, I told the truth to the headmistress. I didn't want to go there, though it was a lovely school, I just wasn't up for it, as politely as I could. It's not like it was a secret, she could pretty much see the misery on my face. I had valid reasons that I gave to my parents several times before, but my dad is hellishly strict, so he made me apply to that school. We got home and my dad was furious. He took my phone and the door to my room. I went to bed early. In the middle of the night, he came in my room, told me to get up and draw the curtains. I only had underwear and a t-shirt. As I got up, he used a long wooden cooking stick of around 16 inches to whack the crap out of me. I screamed in pain, but this guy didn't care. He hit me everywhere. Bruises, scars, like I've never seen until the stick broke, and he took off the slipper and continued to hit me for around 10 to 15 minutes, saying how he felt disrespected and who I thought I was acting like that. I never saw him the same way again. I still shudder a little when I hear his voice and when he touches me, even for a hug. I'm 19. I ended up going to a different school, meeting my parents halfway. Not perfect, but definitely much better. My mom put me on dog restrictions. When I was 8 or so years old, I wasn't allowed to pet, look at, or interact with either of our dogs for 48 hours. I was so upset. I love my dogs so much. It hurt my feelings so much when they walked over to me and I had to ignore them. Also, getting switched was pretty awful. For those that don't know, a switch is a long thin branch from a willow tree used to spank a child. Talk about leaving some welts on your butt. Hoo-wee, that crap hurt. I can still hear the whistling sound it made as the switch was slicing through the air. Beatings will continue until your morals improve, in all freaking seriousness. Life got better and I never saw my dad anymore, and my mom asked when I was having kids and when I haven't seen them in years despite living probably 30 minutes from them. My worst punishment was when I was 13. I went out with my friend who I've known for years. We went just around my neighborhood and parked nearby for hours. My mom was ticked about it. I was grounded for 6 months with no electronic usage. I wasn't allowed to see any of my friends. I was literally a hostage in my own house. I've never felt so alone and disappointed in myself, and I felt awful for my friends who had to go through that with me. Not as horrible as some of the other comments on here, but one time my mom told me to shut up when I was about 5 or so, and she slapped me on my mouth, causing one of my witty little baby teeth to pop out. I can't tell you if I was more grateful to get the little crap out of my mouth or shocked that she slapped me.